Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I will be doing a two-piece swimsuit, and I actually decided to do this swimsuit because it's a gift for my cousin, and I wanted to add some beaded embroidery. I don't know how to do beaded embroidery, so this is my first time trying out beaded embroidery, but I hope that it comes out how I'm envisioning it. It's not a lot of beaded embroidery that I'll be doing. It's just going to be a little bit. I want to add like a sun or half of a sun onto the top. So I hope that it comes out. And but anyway, I wanted to show you guys the process from cutting it to sewing it to adding the beaded work on it. So I hope you guys like this video. So I decided to use this really pretty like olive green color from some dead stock fabric that I had. And the reason I decided to use this color is because I feel like it's a really cool like summer color. And I love all the earth tones, but it also reminded me of olives. And I think that that's really cool. So that's the reason I chose this color for her. But anyway, I started off by laying out the fabric and um, putting down all the pieces, all the pattern pieces to make sure that I had enough fabric to work with. And then I started cutting all the pieces. I started off with the bottoms first, and then I moved on to the top. But I tend to sometimes use the electrical cutter and rotary cutter, and then I sometimes do a combination of also using the scissors, especially when doing swim, because there's like sometimes the swimwear has like whether it's a V shape or a curved or a curve edge or something like that, and I feel like I have to get those little pieces cut correctly, otherwise the design does not come out as perfect as I want it to. So I try to be very careful with that. But also I use a rotary cutter because my hands and my fingers hurt a lot with my fibromyalgia. But I tried to do both, but anyway, if you're able to get a rotary cutter, honestly, they are life-changing. So I highly suggest that you get one on Amazon. I bought this at a shop where they sell a lot of sewing stuff in LA, but you can also find them online. And I've heard that they even have some wireless ones now, which I need to look into because that might come in handy because the cable sometimes does get in the way, so that's kind of annoying at times. But anyway, so I started off by cutting off the self and the lining first to the bottoms. So I hope that this clip helps you guys out with how you do the cutting. I tend to always add paper at the bottom instead of just cutting like the fabric and the pattern. The reason for that is because if you place paper underneath your patterns, it does give you some stability when you're cutting and your fabric does not move all over the place. So it truly does help when you're cutting if you add paper underneath. And I always go ahead and add some tapes to hold on to my pieces so that in case that they fall off or anything, that they don't get all mixed up with the pieces. But that little trick also helps. So if you're able to do that. And also I like to save some paper from markers that are no longer needed, because I use this paper as I use this recycled paper and I use it for cutting some of my patterns whenever I need to. So that also kind of saves me some money, as well as it also helps the environment. So if you're able to save any scraps of fabric or any paper that you could use later on, I highly suggest that. Once you're done cutting your bottom pattern pieces, I moved on to my top piece. And when you're cutting this, make sure that you cut the notches because you are going to be adding the straps to the top. So we want to make sure that we place them in the correct size, in the correct area, and the notches help a lot with guiding us with that. So don't forget to always, always, always include cutting your notches because they are there for a reason and they are super helpful. So just a little tip. And then another thing that I do that I like to do when I'm cutting or even sewing at times is I either watch other YouTubers' videos to kind of get inspired as well. I do enjoy watching other people like Mia Maples and her mom are pretty funny. I also like listening to the wizard Liz. She's amazing. But anyway, these are the pieces to the top and the bottom all cut, and now I'm going to move on to cutting the straps. So I was just making sure that I had enough fabric for the straps, which I did, thankfully. I will be needing, or you will be needing, 4 straps for the bottom in total, 2 for each side, and you're going to need 2 straps for the top in total. So I was just measuring and making sure that I had enough fabric width to cut the straps. So I ended up cutting them at 1.5 inches. And I do like to mark the measurements first and then cut them so that I can cut them as straight as possible with the rotary cutter instead of the scissors, because the rotary cutter does tend to cut straps a little straighter, so that's super helpful. But if you don't, you can definitely do it with the scissors if you don't have a rotary cutter, an electrical rotary cutter. But yeah, it definitely helps. Once you're done cutting all your strips, your straps, then you should end up with your straps looking like this and all your pattern pieces like this, and just set everything aside so that you know what you want to start sewing first. Once I have all my pieces gathered, I start separating the self and then the lining, and I pick whichever one I want to start with first. It doesn't really matter. Just remember to always leave a hole for the opening at the bottom for both the top and the bottom piece that you're going to sew. You're going to leave an opening on the lining so that you can flip it inside out. So always remember to leave that step on the lining pieces. And I actually started off with the bottom, and I'm going to sew the bottom piece, but I'm also going, first I'm only going to sew the bottom piece here. And I just want to make sure that I'm lining it up perfectly so that it comes out nice and even. So that's super important for you to do. And we're just going to use an overlock machine to sew this for all the pieces. We're only going to use an overlock machine or a home serger if you have a home serger for most of this project. You will be adding the straps on later on with a single needle, but for the most part, you're going to be using the overlock machine. Once you're done with sewing those pieces, we are going to start adding the lining. So I need to change all the thread color to make sure that it matches the swimsuit that I'm sewing. And we're going to start off by sewing the straps. All you have to do is fold it in half. And I like to cut a piece of tape, a thick piece of tape like this, to kind of put it on the machine and use it as my guide so that my straps come out nice and even. Otherwise, I feel like I can't sew straight. So this is super, super helpful. I definitely recommend doing that as a trick if you don't have like a magnet to use as a guide. But this is super helpful. You can do this with the serger or your single needle machine at home. I just happen to be able to use this serger that has an elastic attachment to it. So that's why I'm able to sew the straps like this. But you can also do this at home. It's with your serger or with your single needle. So yeah, so I'm just gonna sew all the straps together, and I actually stopped and cut it a little bit just because I wanted to see if I was sewing it properly, so I was using this as my practice piece. Once you're done sewing all your straps, you're going to then flip them inside out and cut them to the length that you want them for your bottom pieces and also for your top. We're going to start adding the elastic to the top, and we're going to start at the top corner where the straps go. That's where we're going to start adding the elastic. And just remember that the elastic always goes on the self part. So we're putting together the self and the lining at this point, but you have to add the elastic on the self, not the lining. Once you're done adding elastic all around your top, you're going to do the same for your bottoms all around on the self part. Remember, it goes on the self part, the elastic. And make sure that the other side, your lining, is on the other side and that it has that opening where we're going to flip it inside out. But you're going to add the elastic all the way around as well. When I'm sewing, I like to make sure that I'm checking the other side, which is the lining, to make sure that the elastic and the thread are grabbing both sides of the fabrics. But as you can see, I'm always checking and moving the clips. I do like to clip everything just so that I can make sure that everything lines up properly, especially the seams. Like this, and then I start going all the way around the waist, the front part area, and then I continue all the way around. But it's always make sure that you're sewing the elastic again on the self part. Once you're done with that, you are going to move on to beading. If you want to add beading, I decided to add some beading to my swimwear because when I ironed it, I accidentally burned it a little bit. You can kind of see it right there. But so I decided to just make a design to just cover that up. I was going to do a full sunshine, but I decided to kind of do like a half sun, half sunset for this design because I just didn't want it to be super heavy. And honestly, this is my first time beading, so I watched a lot of videos on YouTube on how to do the beading, but I figured it out by watching everyone's creativity and how they bead and all these tutorials. So that definitely helped. It does take a long time to bead, guys. It is not fast. It did take a long time. So I sat down and watched some Netflix at the same time, but you can see is pretty clean on the back. So the next step that you're going to do once you're done with your beading, you're going to add some heat and bond to the back of this fabric of your beading. And once you add that, the heat and bond, it's adhesive. So you're just going to add it to the back of that beading, that beadwork you just finished. And I actually just, instead of using an iron, I had a small Cricut heat press. So I just ended up using that. It was perfect for this small design. And I didn't press it because I didn't want to break the beads. So I just kind of like gently ironed it on the back. But I just went ahead and cut a piece off and try to trim the edges a little bit more when you do this step so that the heat doesn't transfer on to anything else. That's what happened to me. I forgot to clip the edges, but that's okay. It still came out perfectly well. So I just went ahead and pressed it on the back, and as you can see, it's a little bit sticky, but it honestly works really well. I used to do embroidery like with my PE, I forgot, 500 or 800 embroidery machine, the Brother embroidery machine, but I no longer have it. So that's why I have all these materials to use now while I'm doing hand beading. But just go ahead and gently iron it. And I did end up closing the swimsuit, but I had to reopen the bottom part of the swimsuit so that I could add the beadwork because I didn't want it to show on the other end or kind of be uncomfortable. So I went ahead and just opened it from the bottom. I took off the elastic, so I'm going to have to close it up again with elastic and open the side part, but it came out pretty good. Once I was done, I closed it up again, and this is the final result. I hope you guys like this tutorial. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more swimsuit tutorials or other fashion tutorials. I will be making more. Thanks for watching.